It is a privilege to be able to introduce our guest preacher for this weekend. Victor Andre Greene is a licensed minister in the United Church of Christ. Victor received his Master of Divinity degree from the Divinity School at Duke University. He is a recipient of the 2017 Frederick Buechner Writing Award, and he is a former associate pastor for youth and young adults and the first black pastor at the American Church in Paris. He is currently a consultant minister for Middle Collegiate Church, a multicultural, multi-ethnic, and intergenerational UCC congregation in New York City. Victor is currently living in Paris, where he is writing a novel, and Victor got into town this past Thursday and has been taking Iowa in for the very first time. Victor mentioned a couple of days ago that he wanted to go back to Paris with one thing, and that was a John Deere hat as a souvenir. And wouldn't you know it, that yesterday at the John Deere booth at the Neighbors Day Festival, they gave Victor a green John Deere hat. Victor is passionate about the intersections of theology, social justice, and the arts, and it is a true gift to have him with us this weekend at Plymouth. Friends, let's give Victor a warm Plymouth welcome.
Well, good morning. It is really good to be in Des Moines. It is. It has been and continues to be what I've been told, a surprising city, and it has been nothing but a rich time thus far. So it's been great meeting many of you so far. I imagine I'll meet more after service, and I'm just extremely grateful for the time that I've had thus far. I'm going to invite us to listen to the last bits of the scripture that were already read. I want to invite you to listen with obviously Juneteenth in mind. Verse 36 through verse 37, coming out of Acts chapter 4. There was a Levite from Cyprus, Joseph, to whom the apostles gave the name Barnabas, which means son of encouragement. He sold a field that belonged to him, then brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet. Our story today doesn't say what kind of field it was. It doesn't mention if there were acres of alfalfa, watermelon, or rice, corn, patches of sunflowers, or of cotton. Doesn't mention any old skeleton bones maybe dug up. Not the iron within. All that mixed up dirt. Doesn't even tell us about how the field was inherited in the first place. Not if it was stolen or claimed as a birthright, or redlined. It doesn't mention to us as readers and listeners how much it sold for either. Not even how much it cost to leave behind. How much it may have cost to lay down. It doesn't tell us as readers standing in 2023 how long they waited for 40 acres and a mule. How they waited and waited and waited. And then comes onto the scene out of left field, onto our page, then comes Joseph Barnabas. Joseph Barnabas, soon to be, for those who are attentive readers, soon to be a precursor to Saul becoming Saul, and Saul becoming Paul, and Barnabas and Paul becoming missionaries. Soon to be, Barnabas, a whole saint with a feast day. As a matter of fact, just last week, Saint Barnabas, coming from a long ways away. It doesn't tell us our story about how long the distance was for Joseph Barnabas to travel. Doesn't tell us, and what I believe, that Joseph Barnabas came delayed. And here, as I read it, to the ones who knew Joseph Barnabas best, just Joe. Joe, who's often late to the party. Joe. Just your average Joe. Coming from a long ways away out of left field, like those Levites who come from but a tribe. Joe, like those Levites who come from descendants of those forced out of their homeland. Joe, that runaway Joe. Coming to that community we literally read about and heard about just last week, doing the same thing. Gathered in what can read like a gobsmacking perfect, certainly hearing it for the second time around, that it almost appears and feels to be a form of idealism. Certainly an image that was Instagram filtered. A fleeting fantasy, a gross hyperbole. We can hear that story of Joe arriving to this community like a flyer made out for political propaganda. No claims to private ownership. Everything owned, held in common. We can read the story and hear it and find ourselves wanting to move into a very narrow discussion about something akin to socialism versus capitalism, or socialist capitalism versus another ism. And this coming from the person who has lived 5 years under socialism in France. We can find ourselves wanting to walk down this road and forget it is an echo. It's an echo that was whistling in that Pentecost breeze, when every one of them were in one accord. There must be drunken harmony, being encouraged to wait for that mixed tongue good news, for that power, for that comforter to arrive, for that encourager to arrive. We can forget that the ones who gathered back at Pentecost are the same ones who are gathered again, repeating this sort of practice, this echo, that they are the ones who are gathered in one heart and in one mind and in one soul, that they are the ordinary, the unschooled, and they are also the recently jailed. Just verses before, those who were imprisoned and now, for maybe a brief moment under the sun, also the ones recently emancipated. Emancipated into a new union, we might even say, and yet still in their guts, remembering the threats that brought them to jail in the first place, and maybe in their guts still feeling a sense of threat behind them, a sense of terror that is always around them, waiting for that comforter, for that encourager. And then comes that runaway Joe. Joe like a cool breeze. Joe like a comforter and an encourager. Joe like a flaming tongue. Joe like a babbling drunk with strawberry soda pop on Joe's breath and a bluebird caught in their throat, echoing a field holler. This land is your land. This land is Joe, who's come to the party a little bit late. Joe, who is delayed. Joe, who's tired of traveling from a long ways away. Joe, who maybe stumbles toward them and lays down coin. I don't know if you can hear that coin fall at the apostles' feet. And I don't know if the temptation is to jump straight to something like symbolism, but it's real coin. It's real money. It's real individual and collective inheritance, but it is also more. I believe what Joe lays down, coin and inheritance, is also what we might imagine today the general orders of resurrection. What he lays down, what Joe lays down is what Gwendolyn Brooks has already said, that we are each other's harvests. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. Joe lays this down. We were created to live like this. To be in union with ourselves and one another and the land and, dare I say, money. To be in union in such a way that when each of us rise up, we see alfalfa and watermelon and rice. We see those dry bones maybe prophetically rising up shoulder to shoulder and on each other's shoulder, that we are each other's harvest. Then comes that runaway Joe, laying down the general orders of resurrection, laying down philanthropic vision, laying down scholarships and food vouchers, laying down loan forgiveness, laying down new ideas and housing projects, laying down, dare I say, a way to repair a world, laying down reparations, laying down black liberation for those who have been waiting and waiting and waiting. Those who I met at the festival just downtown, and I asked them, tell me how it's been living in Des Moines, Iowa as a person of color. Laying down dreams of entrepreneurial advantages, laying down an increase from 73% renting ownership of black bodies, laying down dreams and burdens. You can hear the coin click, click, clicking around their ankles, around their feet, laying down and making coin rain. Their feet dancing, Their feet dancing, still showing the grooves of those shackles, the recently emancipated, still wondering if their flesh might one day heal, or if we might forget the wounds, the marks, the engravings around their ankles, around their backs, still waiting for that encourager, that comforter. Coin laid down at our feet, too. I believe if we imaginatively put ourselves there, we might read one engraved coin saying, "Church, are you still buying what the world is selling? The seeds of our thirst with private ownership and its historical ideologies tethered to controlling bodies, accumulation and hoarding built out of fear, the mounds of geographical stories and cartographies of triumph and of struggle, of land loss, of land swindling and land grabs." Another engraved coin we might read and hear falling at our feet. In a world where everybody wants to rule the world and thinks that their way of living is best, are you picking up what Joe's laying down? The matrix of babbling tales and songs and myths and, yes, miracle. Story doesn't say what kind of field it was, but it does show us how to pass it on. With grace and encouragement, with boldness and determination, with dreams beyond consumption. As evidence in that average Joe. Joe who comes to us like a climate migrant. Joe who comes to us like a student walkout, showing what we can do instead with our inheritance. Joe who comes to us echoing Toni Morrison in Song of Solomon, and if I got a home, you got one too. Grab it. Grab this land. Take hold of it. Make it. Shake it. Squeeze it. Stomp it. Dig it. Plow it. Seed it. Reap it. Rent it. Buy it. Sell it. Multiply it. And pass it on. Can you hear me? Toni Morrison says, pass it on. Joe who passes it on, who does what Dr. Willie Jennings says and uses money to destroy money, who insists on leaving behind the plots of man that tell us that lie of scarcity, that there isn't enough to go around. Joe who comes to us like a vignette of a freedman, we might say. A freedman of the U.S. colored troops with a lowered rifle, but with a wry smile from what they've learned whilst traveling from many fields. That there are still those among us, still waiting, but yet still gathering. Still breaking bread, still choosing each other above all other possible options, still gathering, still believing, still, I don't know, still having a festival downtown and parading, still having drag shows because, yeah, that celebration of resurrected life too. still believing in each other, still having do-rag festivals, still having protests, still having annual remembrance ceremonies, still celebrating every breath. Joe, who comes to us like a general, all the way from Galveston, all the way from Miami, all the way from Paris, all the way from the furthest part of the world to Des Moines, coming to us like a cool breeze, laying down the general orders of resurrection, coming to us saying we can be the crop of alternative ways of living. We can be the topsoil of radical tending. We can still choose each other and be the plot of each other's celebration. Story doesn't say what kind of field it was, just like it doesn't say what kind of Joe they were. But I believe in the Joe they can be. Here to the ones of us who know Joe best, maybe better than myself, I believe that this is your everyday average Joe, your student Joe, your abroad Joe, your farmer Joe, your teacher Joe, your politician Joe, your recently retired Joe, your healthcare worker Joe, your artist Joe, the flamboyant Joey, the cynical JoJo, the daydreaming Josephine, Joe who comes to us out of left field singing that field holler. This resurrection was made for you and